Okay, so it's looking like it'll be a bit longer before I get the movie I wanted, which means we're doing the webcomic review first. It's been far too long since I covered this series, but I think it's time to return to the world of Slightly Damned. Slightly Damned was the very first webcomic that I ever reviewed on this show, and one that I've been reading the longest out of any like it. And mostly I held off from covering it again, since most of what I said back then still applies here. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to do what I've been doing with the other comics as of late. I want to say I have at least improved in at least covering comic-based media, especially if they're independent, since I try to be open-minded and give them a fair chance. I might not be the most insightful or professional reviewer out there, but I do want to at least highlight what I see, even if there are flaws. If anything though, this webcomic has gone on long enough that I think I could start covering either chapters or even an entire book. It depends on what each book covers and how well I can pace any summaries I do. Of course, for this video, I'm only covering one chapter, The Flower Festival, which is part of what would be considered book 3 of the series, and it just so happens to start right after the point I would have left on my first video of it. So now we're gonna get to see what happens when our favorite trio visits a city built around a giant tree. I sure hope nothing bad happens to this lush green environment. Anyway, Chapter 6, or Part 6, The Flower Festival. Spoilers for those who haven't read up to page 467. Please be caught up or be spoiled. We begin with just a short glimpse of the city's architecture. The city itself is mostly wooden, like the Tree of Peace itself, and the roots seem to spread all throughout. And later we see how those roots get incorporated with general accessibility and passage. St. Curtis, as this city is called, and even though you'll find just about every median race here, you're not gonna find any angels or demons. Oh yeah? Then what about that guy? And sure enough, water demon. But this human doesn't seem to be bothered, and the demon appears rather friendly. ... Hey, what you guys looking at? Buwaro, you were supposed to stay inside the wagon, remember? Well, it's fine apparently. No one's reacting badly to this. Not even these two angels that are also walking about. Sure, Buwaro and Kyary are happy they can walk around together without much worry, but what is up with the people in this town? Oh well, we might find Kyary's brother here, so on to the trouble center so we can do jobs. Yeah, despite earlier, turns out it's rather uncommon to see angels and demons, and despite plenty of tolerant people around, you still get the occasional scaredy pants that fears of puppy dog-eyed demons. But otherwise, the general reaction is, I can dig it. Days later though, a small child latches onto Buwaro with curiosity and awe. He's a baby angel, which causes Buwaro to worry about what the parent might be, considering what happened last time. And speaking of, here's the mother. I don't want to die. It's okay. Kanako here isn't a warrior, and her son Tyrell doesn't usually like other demons. What would that mean? Yo! Ooh. Well, Rhea might have the right idea, but Kyary really wants to know about her brother, but is too nervous to say anything. But Buwaro helps her out. Sure enough, Sane here did see an angel who has the same cowlick as her, and Buwaro thinks he's being a cool boyfriend. How cute. Anyway, we learn exactly where Brother Kazai is. In prison. Apparently, he and Sanjuro caused the rock slide that blocked the Western Pass, and are having to help clean it up. They don't seem to like warrior angel clans, especially the Zoizons, which Kyary says she's part of, but they just laugh since she's too timid to be a warrior. In fairness, I wouldn't doubt them for not believing, but it's okay. Even if they laugh, she at least feels good to be loved by her friends. Let's hope nothing but happy things happen to her. Anyway, Tyrell is cranky. Time for them to leave. But before they do, Rhea asks how they even got here to begin with, and we get a little more info about the Ascension Light from Hell being part of some ritual, but we don't get much more since Kanako is uncomfortable talking about it. Also, given the massive rock slide Kazai and Sanjuro caused, is that really something he would do? Yes, that sounds like something Kazai might cause. I would be concerned, though also I know what happens later, so yeah, this is accurate. Oh, hello, Savo! It looks like even he's confused on what's been going on in the city, and why these two are kissing! And then he gets annoyed by something loud. It's the series mascot! This here is Crunky, a baby golden wind wyvern that was once like the mascot of a public forum for Slightly Damned. This is her first official appearance in the comic, and soon she'll be a recurring pet character. Otherwise, the flowers are falling from the tree, meaning it's the official start of the Flower Festival and everyone is happy. Except Cliff. Apparently some rough stuff have been going around lately, including the death of that one shopkeeper who kept fairies in a jar. Good. He's concerned that the world is in trouble and no one seems to care, though Duster reminds him that he's not the hero he was, but I guess deep down he wants to be. In any case, the trio returns, only to tell them that Kazai was already let out of jail, meaning he could already be out of town by now, given the sort of person we learn him to be, but the good news is, Buwaro found a baby! And this time, Rhea isn't going to say no to it like she did that one time. Anyhow, given the time of year, Kyary gives her friends presents, because it's her birthday and she thinks she'll have to give presents instead of receiving them. Oops. But at least she got a pet on her birthday, so it counts. Buwaro is of course excited for when it's his birthday, except Darius never wrote a day for when he was born. Not like he would know anyway. But still, this is the one time where you can call him a bad parent. But he can still choose to have it on Kyary's birthday. But then you would have the same birthday as my brother too. Because we are twins. Yeah! And we were born on the same day? Oh, right, got it! Oh, you! Meanwhile, we learn that Iratu's group has taken over this bar, killed the owners, and Savo is attempting to revive them? What, is he expecting to get zombies? More importantly, it seems that the reason the seasons are messed up is because of our mysterious Jackeye enemy, Moonshade, who also seems to have a snake tongue. Sorta. Otherwise, Iratu shows up and we learn something. Seems that even after all these years growing up, with that moon pendant and all, his massive body was still because of his moon emblem. His harness lets him activate the effects whenever he wants, but otherwise he's just a smidge taller than Azurai. His smack talk isn't appreciated, and you know that in a battle against a wolf-like demon and a goat-dog demon, the wolf will always win, unless a shark is involved. Then the shark wins. Still, he has a brilliant idea. Since everyone else is just up and about, why not just enjoy the festival? That way, when the time comes, they can jump everyone by surprise and sack the city like the last one. Iratu might be funny, especially when he's drunk, but he can be scary. And that's not counting what happens way later. So the next morning, Rhea and friends have to help Cliff sell stuff, since the festival has started and Miranda is busy with getting ready to give birth. The festival will only last a week, so they got plenty of time. Oh right, Crunky hasn't seen Kyary when she's a bunny. And I guess even baby wyverns would likely eat small animals? Which is why it's a good thing she catches on! Happy time again! Yeah, Rhea picks on Kyary again for doing a table dance, but she'll get hers once they start selling stuff. And we do get some nice world building here. Like there are magic items that exist in different forms, and might be powered by magic crystals that have different functions based on their element. Also, it's just fun seeing Cliff act like an actual uncle figure to Buwaro, especially in this panel. We also learn that while merfolk do exist, I mean, so did fairies, and they didn't even know about them before. We learned that hybrid races exist. Toby here is an example of a hukai, a mix between a human and a jackai. And yes, all median races can mix with each other, even if it sounds impossible. But hey, this is fantasy. In fantasy, anything is possible, and if nothing else, love finds a way. Who knows if this can happen with angels and demons? Well, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Now this mean-looking bastard is a Kamega, which are the turtle people of this world. And while I know that in this story, the people know what medians are from demons, it's still a bit odd that everyone would react to a demon with fear, even the Kamegas, yet not immediately freak out over this guy. He's the one who points out Crunky's gender, and knowing what she is, he wants to buy her. But they won't do it because she was a gift from her boyfriend, and the jerk decides to take it anyway after blasting them with water and the money. By this point, I wonder where the city guards are, but it's okay, Kyary's on it. Goes to show you, don't mess with the gal wielding a sword. I don't believe it. A real frickin' angel. I thought they were just costumes. You seriously thought everyone was in a costume this whole time? Try explaining the demons with quadrupedal legs then, asshole! At least Kyary's glad Crunky is safe, but yeah, this will be brought up later, since it's building to something very important about Kyary that's been going around forever now. Anyway, Sammy arrives, with Toby in tow, and what follows is just another moment in cute, when Bawaro eats what's left of these honey-coated popcorn balls the kids brought, prompting them to get more, and really that's part of the experience. When this comic isn't covering plot points or whatever, it's being wholesome with its characters, especially the main cast. Chu just keeps finding new ways to get Bawaro into curious situations, and getting Rhea to provide friendly snark to an easily embarrassed Kyary, who otherwise is too innocent for her brand of humor. They've always been the type of group that make great foils for each other, and despite the things they say or do, it's never enough to set them apart. I will say that will be tested later in the story, especially when the very big thing happens in like book 4, but for now, it's stuff like this that makes this comic as lovable as it's been. At any rate, time to officially name the little baby wyvern. And I know Rhea is teasing and all, but still, don't be making fun of her because she's a bit large. Bawaro comes up with the name Crunky, because she looks like a popcorn ball, and I saw a sign say they were crunky. Don't you mean crunchy? Well, she likes the name, that's all that matters. That night, Kyary is having trouble sleeping because she's worried about what will happen when they do find Kazai. Not because of how he'll react to her boyfriend being a demon, but because the two had a fight. She doesn't remember why, but because of it, she's worried he doesn't even care for her safety and whatnot. And part of this is hard to comment on when I know what's going to happen later, because there are far many worse things that will happen that can really be hard for her, and you just want things to turn out okay. But, as Bawaro starts saying on the next page, she shouldn't give up on him, or herself, because she at least has family to turn to. Not like him, whose brother is somewhere else, and their father is acting like the Grim Reaper. Not that he would know that, of course, but you can tell he's trying to cheer her up. And she knows too, so crisis averted. Day 2 is where some of the sad stuff begins. But first, Rhea overheard their talk last night and will at least help them with it because of her sensitive nose. After all, her kind are like hunting animals in a way, so she can track by scent. But it's not Kazai she finds, it's Jake, not from State Farm. Yeah, Jake's been on the road for a while now, and he's finally caught up to our heroes. Their friend Ramirez is studying in Garden City, and the letter he got for him told him Rhea was dead. Well, she gets convinced to show him proof that she died, and he does feel sorry for what she might have gone through. So, does this mean you're a zombie? Do you eat brains? At least he's more tactful than Ryuji. Especially while he flirts with Kyary, He sees that she's already taken and accepts it, even befriending Buwaro since he's like a puppy dog and he likes animals. Anyway, judging from the dialogue and how they once promised to travel together as kids, it's sounding like Jake will be our next party member. Maybe not full-fledged, but still. His animal-loving shenanigans might lead to some fun. Cliff returns after checking out his horses, and today he wants to try selling the set of potions Miranda was making, the Rainbow Reverie. As they mentioned before, they're magic potions with different effects that might have some adverse effect on non-medians, even if the green one did still heal Buwaro that one time. Poor Buwaro just wants to be better at magic, even if he's still just a novice. Kyary at least tries to teach him simple magic, even if it results in this, and, oh no. Oh no, crap! Monster Dragon! Carol, save us! Whoa! Damn it, Carol! You suck! But then his gaze shifts over to the Rainbow Reverie, and it sounds like he really wants them potions. He might even take it by force, but no way Cliff is gonna let him do it. Halt, demon! Leave that human alone or face the consequences! You may kiss my posterior, you son of an ugly woman. What? How dare you? For such an uncouth remark, instead I will kick it! Oh yes, as you would expect, angel cusses are pretty much just sophisticated phrases. Because Gaia won't let you say fuck. Anyway, the real backup comes in the form of Varami, a seraph angel who tells Savu to just go away. And he does. He reports to Azurai, who clearly did a bad thing and killed someone when he wasn't supposed to. Oh, Azurai, you're such a scamp, murdering people for their chicken. Of course, that's not all. Iratu is clearly ignoring his self-ban from drinking alcohol, and despite Savu reminding him this, he still gets one in. If you weren't as jolly and goofy and leaned more toward violence, I'd probably relate you to Kaido somehow. And apparently, Cliff was only bluffing, since he only has all that amazing magic power if Duster is around. Speaking of, he shows up to say Miranda is babying it up. The timing couldn't have been worse, for while Varami doesn't seem to mind Buwaro and Kyary's relationship, this guy certainly does. By the way, it isn't said until way later in the story, but the Earth and Wind Angel duo we see are named Tobal and Rowan, which is a reference to a Swiss candy bar, Toblerone, which would also coincide with the naming convention for newly introduced characters in St. Curtis. Would have been nice for Varami to stop Tobal, but she's already gone. Tobal questions why Buwaro has a star pendant when that's only something angels would have, and thinks he stole it. Furthermore, despite objections from his friends, Tobal believes he might be controlling them somehow. Guess this idiot doesn't know how to read the room, and Kyary gets angry. What in the world are you doing? Why are you attacking me? Can't you see I'm trying to help you? Are you sick in the head or something? You know what, Tobal? You don't deserve Rowan. And this leads to what was being alluded to this whole time. For based on this scene of her remembering the abuse her mother inflicted on her, and how it reflects her actions in real life, it's apparent now that Kyary suffers from a heavy case of depression. Throughout the comic, Kyary would have cases of self-doubt, nightmares about certain demons, and points where she feels like people are judging her for being different or whatever. They've always led to her being sad, so usually someone like Buwaro, who is very gentle and understanding, would be what cheers her up and remind her that things are okay. But regardless, and while what can cause depression differs with each individual, when it hits like it does now, it hits so hard that all you can do is yell, "Poor Kyary!" Because you want her to not be hurt. Yet something always happens to make things worse for her. In fact, that's pretty much how the majority of this current storyline will go. Things will continue to get worse for her before it gets better. How far it goes is some of the most gut-wrenching stuff to happen thus far, and it makes you long for pictures where it's just Kyary and Buwaro snuggling and kissing, even if it's through external material. But you know how it can be. Sometimes in order to get the good ending, you have to go through some troubled times. It was only a sleeping spell. I meant no harm. Asshole, that's still assault. Go melt in the sun or something, you worthless chocolate bar. And more despair to come, since now that she attacked another angel, the thought that she might be a traitor who must die fills her head, and she ends up shutting herself inside the wagon. Now, aside from her mother, this could also be more of her questioning the things she's learned while in heaven, though what she's seen contradicts it. But is it really okay? Even when she said earlier that it feels good to be loved by her friends, she still has these doubts, as I imagine she wants validation in some way because of how often she gets looked down upon. But no matter how many times they tell her it's okay to be friends with someone, something is going to happen. If and when I do return to this series, you will experience the sort of despair that can befall a person just from depression alone. It's only one example, and likely based on personal experience or from another person's perspective, but it's very effective, just as some of the lessons that come from being a good person. So, as this chapter winds down, Buwaro picks up a strange feather and sees, "Yoo-hoo! Sorry, not thirsty. You are very far from home, little boy. What are you doing in Midias? Your kind doesn't belong here." "Oh yeah? Who the hell are you to decide that?" Well, luckily, Buwaro isn't deterred by this and just shakes his hand. The stranger doesn't seem bothered, and as Kyary looks out to see what's up, we see exactly who this guy really is. He is Miros the Motori bird. Well, like I said before, not much would have changed about the overall quality of the comic, based on what I've read already, but as far as this individual chapter goes, it does great in setting up the rest of the storyline that's about to unfold in this city. We've established that the civilians don't mind angels and demons here, even if it's possible they just see them as costumed people. We have a slight hint of what the demons are going to do with the city, and that Moonshade is more dangerous than we thought him to be. And outside of some world building on tools, animals, etc., we've also begun a deeper exploration of Kyary and what sort of troubles she sees involving her family, her friends, and just about anyone who might judge her, and how that might affect her standing with them. Art-wise, there is a gradual evolution in the character designs as they start to become more natural and closer to how they look now. Like in the sense that characters like Buwaro have more weight to them. I mean, in the past, human-like characters would not have much in the way of muscle, and while Buwaro would still be a bit scrawny here, he would seem to be getting closer to how one might see him in real life or whatnot. And of course, the scenery is certainly something. If I recall, I hear the backgrounds and environments are the hardest things to put together, compared to drawing the characters, that is. Since there's so many details you have to consider, the exact placement of objects, the shading from light sources, and that's also something that will improve over time, but it never got any easier to my understanding. Even still, this is a fairly unique setting since it's not often you get to see a massive city settled around a massive tree. The culture is also interesting, given prior history, and how it's grown since then. And of course, while the comic remains wholesome with its characters, morals, and inclusivity, it is shaping up to take a serious turn with how the trio will develop. And I hope whether you read on your own or if I cover it another time, that you get the satisfaction and payoff that awaits you at the end. With that, we have one more request to do, and I'll just say right now, it's certainly no pig deal. Sheep and Wolves 2 is next. I'll see you then.